Hello, this is Expressman, and welcome to what will be a three-part series on getting started in building with Stormworks. So this video is intended for anyone who has really never built anything in Stormworks, or you tried and it didn't go very well. We're going to go through all the basics, everything you need to know to get started and be building your own creations, and loving every second of it. So let us get started here when we get out of camera mode. So we go to the workbench. Hopefully you're familiar with that much. Press E to enter the workbench, and we are in the work area. Now the work area, you can see, has a boundaries and a forward direction. The boundaries are determined by the dock size. So say if you're playing campaign, it starts you in a very, very small boathouse. Your building area will be quite a bit smaller than this. This is sort of the custom solo area, so we have a large dock slip to work with, so we have a large work area. There are ways to make the work area even larger, editing game files directly. You'd have to do a web search to see how to do that. I personally have never done it yet. Someday, when I do a large freighter build, maybe I will. So as you can see, they gave us a block in the very middle, and that pink shadowy block inside of it indicates the center of mass, which of course, when you have one block, is just in the middle of the block. If we added a second block, you can see the center of mass moved forward. Anyway, speaking of movement, let's talk about how you move around in the editor. I zoomed in and zoomed out. Well, I approached it with the W and S keys. You can use the A and D keys to crab sideways, and you can use the Q and E keys to traverse up and down. There is a way you can, of course, to look around. That's pivoting in place. It is right drag rather. So everything I will be doing that you'll see me doing is WASD, EQ, and right dragging. You can middle mouse button drag to kind of fast crab around. I never actually use that. Maybe I should, but I just don't. So that's basic movements. That gets you everything you need to go anywhere you need to go. And of course, as the hint in the bottom left tells you, if you press F, it will focus you on a given hovered block. So you could be way off track. You could press F and boom, there we go. That does come in handy sometimes. Okay, so we are going to be really typical here, and we're going to build a basic boat. But a boat is a very good place to start in Stormworks. It allows you to understand really all the building blocks that make up the fundamentals of building. Of course, there are specifics to vehicles, airplanes, helicopters, but what you will learn here will apply significantly toward those other types of vehicles. So it makes it for a good experiment. We are going to build a pleasure craft. So, of course, very often, especially if you do campaign, you have an interest in like rescue craft, and that's great. Build your own rescue craft. But for the sake of example today, to keep it simple, we are just going to build a pleasure craft, you know, the kind that people go to a boat show and some salesmen catch them and then wrestle them into, you know, a high interest loan they can't afford for a boat that they don't want. That's the kind of boat we'll be building today. So when building, so it's going to be, you know, smaller. These boats intentionally they kind of resemble a car in size, and that's on purpose so that they're just immediately, they feel familiar and accessible to automobile drivers, like they're comfortable in the boat. So the very first thing you tend to do when you build a boat is you lay the keel. The keel is sort of the spine, but it's more like a belly spine than a back spine of the boat, and it's very similar to what they do in real life often when they build a boat. And of course, we got the directional arrow down here, so we're going to drag out a keel line toward the front. Now, if your thing goes in the wrong direction and doesn't want to go forward, I don't know if there's a constraint button, but my trick is always to just get a more side angle on what I want to do, and it always seems to understand what I'm doing. I'm going to kind of eyeball it here for size, and we can make some adjustments as we go. If you're a real stickler for trying to hit a certain size, you can see in the bottom right hand corner there is a little measurement in meters there to show both in how many blocks you're laying down and then how much, physical space that represents in relation to your player character. So we could sort of use the stern here and build out the profile of what we want our hull bottom to be. And for that, we're just going to start getting familiar with the different elements here around the editor. Obviously, on the left side here, you've got colors. We'll talk about that more later. On the top, you have a lot of basic tools like spawn in, and you can see under that you have cost. So it would, if you were in campaign, it would cost you $46 to spawn this in. And of course, you can exit. You can create a new vehicle. You could load. You could save. You could go to the Steamworks shop. That kind of stuff. Undo, redo. Selection, we'll go into that later. Erasure, painting, moving, logic, merging, section grid, microcontroller. We're going to get into most of that later on. But very important here on the right rail is a lot of view related stuff. And I keep most of this activated. However, there is one that I keep deactivated that you might want to play with, and that is rotation labels here. So I'm going to go ahead and activate rotation labels. So you can immediately see a difference in the interface, and it's these 3 pills here with hints on keys. And you can see, I, K, O, L, U, J. Let's get a piece that actually has directionalism, like this slope. And now we can see, if we look at the hints here, the side-to-side arrows are for flipping, and the curvy around arrow is for rotation. By and large, I spend most of my time using this JKL trilogy to position pieces. Now, a true 3D modeler will think of this in terms of red, green, blue axis. I don't know if I'm dumb or if I'm practical, but I think of it in terms of like real world activities. And I'm going to explain how my mind thinks of it and let you come up with your own way. But my way works for me, and that is this. I always think of myself as facing the front of the vehicle. And no matter what angle I'm in, no matter where I'm working, I always think of myself as facing the front of the vehicle. It's just it's a headspace. And with that in mind, I think of rotation as J is like reeling in a fishing line or a kite string. It's a reeling action. So that's I think that's technically, that is the red axis. I just don't think of it that way. Then I think of K as a cranking around, almost like, opening and closing a big valve or something, or a steering wheel on a large truck that's facing more upward, or, it's just whatever works for you. Come up with a real world association for what this means to you. And then finally, there's L. I think of that as like a clock, whether it's, counterclockwise or clockwise. I just think of it as like on a wall and spinning on, I guess, what is the blue axis. So I just use those shorthands. It just keeps me from guessing and floundering around when I'm trying to position a piece, and that is something that you want to be quick and efficient at doing. You also may notice that I am not worrying about color yet. I will do painting later on and walk through that. But right now I am not concerned about like pre-selecting colors. I could, but it's just not going to get me anything that I particularly need right now. So we could, we're going to build the back. That's right. Let's not get off track. We will get to the bow later. Now on the back, you have these quick links. They are not what I need right now. So you can see this little Lego-y blocky looking thing. I hit that, and you've got all the blocks. You can search for them by name. You can group them in different ways. I do like to leave the category grouping. It works for me. It's the default, I think, but it works for me. And very often you will see me just doing a search for a block because I know its name. You can use tab to toggle this, so that is very handy. It's also worth noting that while you can drag a block from this into your quick bar and do that with a bunch of different blocks, you can also just select the particular block, hit tab, and it is active. It's just that if you go away from it, you lose it. Okay, so the reason I did this though is slopes in Stormworks work on the basis of 1 by 1, 1 by 2, 2 by 2, 1 by 4, and 2 by 4. So it's very even numbery. So we're gonna drag the I like to leave the first 4 alone all the time: the block, the wedge, the pyramid, and the inverse pyramid. That's just me. I never touch those. Everything else I change as needed. So I'm gonna drag a 1 by 2, and I already got the 4 in there. That's all I need at this very moment. We will do more as we need more. So I'm going to come up here, and you can see I'm already not rotated how I want to be. I could use the little prompt here to realize that I need to do the L key, but also I'm going to go ahead and disable it because I've used my little shorthands and memorized that. Now we could start building it out like this, and we could do this side, and then we can come over here and do this side. And this back and forth gets really tedious and eats up a lot of time. So I'm going to Control Z to undo, or I could hit this button. And I'm going to enable symmetry. So the very top button on the right side here is symmetry, and you can symmetrize along the different axes. And by far the most common is the red axis. So you can see it runs right down the middle vertically. So now when I go to repeat this action, you'll see it doing it equally on both sides. Very, very nice. Okay. So now I didn't have to do that. Sometimes if I'm working out a vessel that's kind of a new concept, I'll sort of do a cross section. So for example, okay, to rotate it on that axis, and then let's see here. I want to well, puzzling it out here with you. Q to go down, A to go over. So one of the funny things about these pleasure craft is that they almost have a trimaran design. I say almost because it is considered a mono hull, but it does have 3 points, and that allows for kind of an incredibly stable design. It's essentially like an exaggerated flat bottom design, and I hit the wrong keys here. The more I talk, the more I hit the wrong keys. Let's see if I'm still happy with this. I'm afraid the end result's going to get too wide, so I'm going to Control Z that, go back to my 1 by 1. What is that? The J axis, and I'm just going to build it out like that. And of course, a hot little trick, just like with the straight pieces, if I kind of lower and flatten my angle here, I can just drag it out and get it to keep going. So I can kind of do that. And then let's say, this is pretty good, but let's say I want it to be, maybe a little steeper. I did practice this a little bit, but I'm also partially winging it here. This slanted piece isn't allowing me to get the placement that I need, so I'm going to double this up so that I can place the 1 by 2 here, spin it on the J. And now, feeling pretty good. Trying to kind of decide what I think about this. Is it wide enough? I almost think that I could have come up steeper from the get-go. I'm debating that. It's not going to be a very large boat. We're definitely in range. Let's see, 3. I think of a lot of things in terms of 3s. That is about right. Okay, you know what? We're going to go with it. So now that I'm basically pleased with what's going on here, we could do a bunch of copy pasting of this and duplicate it along, but honestly, copy paste is a little bit maddening. Some players maybe are quite efficient at doing it. I'm more okay with, once I'm happy with that pattern, I will simply just duplicate it block for block. and make it happen. And that is okay by me. Whoops. And what do we got going here? Another solid block. Now all of these blocks have weight and cost, so the more we do this, the more it will weigh, and the more expensive the vehicle will get, which again, if you're playing a creative mode, doesn't matter. You have unlimited resources, but if you are trying to make this vehicle for campaign, you want to be very much aware of what kind of expense, why am I doing this wrong? There we go. What kind of expense you're running. And let's see if I can get both of these. Ta-da! Okie dokie. So that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah. Not bad. So that's, yeah, we might make it longer, but that's something we can do at any time. So we need to make the bow. Now this is the part that scares a lot of Stormworkers. They just kind of want to not make a smooth, shapy bow because it's hard and tedious. It's really not that hard, and it's not that tedious if you're smart about it. So almost like I showed you with the side, we could just come through here and drag this piece up and like be woo, but that would be really severe and not very boaty looking. And so we've got to work with a bunch of different slopes. As I mentioned, we basically just have 1s, 2s, and 4s to work with. But when we do it right, we can make a very smooth. I've never actually done one with a sort of trimaran thing here. So this is going to be new territory for me. How about that? I mean, it's not a true trimaran. It's just, yeah. So, yeah, that's more to think about. Let us, and really, if I wanted to simplify this, and maybe I just should for the sake of this tutorial, we could just eliminate. And to erase, you just press X, and you notice that it becomes a red box, and it lets you like cover a box. And you can drag it or click if you're just removing a single block, and then boom. So this would have about the same end result, but it would just not have that look. I probably should have pulled up a picture of them, but if you look at hulls on a lot of like recreational pleasure craft, they have those 2 extra ribs. All right, let's do it without, because this might be pretty funky otherwise. So excellent. We need to build the bow. So again, bows are nothing to be afraid of. If you remember, and you'll learn the relationship between 1, 2, and 4. So first of all, we want it to kind of, we wanted to do a smooth transition, right? We don't want it to be abrupt. We want it to gently transition. So we're going to begin with a 1x4. And then we can, if we wanted to run a lot of 1x4, I would have just dragged it and let it complete, like yay. But again, very, very angular, very, very rigid. I'm only going to do the first one in 1x4, and then transition basically right away to 1x2s. And I can see that by just grabbing the 1x2 and bringing it up here, and that I will run a ways. That will be kind of the bulk of the angular. And I'm going to try to run it so that it matches the height of that. If I get it a little wrong, I can fix it. And then I'm going to grab my 1x1. Let's see, L axis, and I'm going to drag it up there a little bit. And I am going higher than the edge because, you know, most boats do have a bow that's prominent, right? It's higher than the rest of the decking, or at least the railing. So now we really have a proper keel, but obviously we need to fill this in with lots of shapy angles to make it look super cool. Again, not scary, very doable. Hang with me. So most builders will start this from the front. So I guess maybe I'll just do that. And what we want to do, I'm just trying to decide if it's too tall. It's pretty easy to back down if it's too tall, is we want to grab our pyramid shape here. And our pyramid shape, we can place, let me rotate that on the J, like I'm reeling it in. And then we can drag downward along our surface here, and boom, we have that angle. Fancy. We can continue to repeat this process, and I'm doing it too far on purpose. It's quite easy to remove pieces. It's a little more work to add. And I'm just going to keep adding and keep adding, and I will slightly overdo it, but there we go. We're going to work this. Okay, so there's our 1x1, but now we need to transition this boat into 2x2s. So definitely these guys hanging down don't need to be there. We are going to grab the, well, there's a couple ways we can do this, but I'm going to hit tab, and we're going to grab the 2x2 pyramid. And I'm going to drop that in my quick bar, hit tab again. And now I can come in here. What is this? The K-axis? Yeah, now it's the J-axis. Nope, now it's the L-axis. Now it's the K-axis. Okay, there we go. And you can see it handles the 2 across and 2 deep, but the 1 down. So now I can come in here, do the same game I was doing earlier. That again, intentionally going too far. Ooh, that's going to force us to make a decision. We'll talk about that later. Because we could drag this out, the 1x1 out to match this, but the end result would be super severe and super angular. So we actually probably want to do the opposite, which is to say, hit the X key, of course, to toggle into erase mode, which is to say back it off, and we're going to smooth that all out. And of course we came too far down, so let's fix that. Excellent. To finish off this, and there's so many different ways to do a bottom, what I'm trying to impress upon you is that the solution is 1, 2, 4. So you can look at other YouTube videos. There's some great YouTube videos on doing bows, and there's also just go in the workshop and look at what people do. After you've built a bow or two, you know what you're looking at. So when you look at what other people have done in the workshop, you're like, aha, I see what they're doing there. So let's see, that's the J. I'm going to go ahead and just do a pyramid, 2x4, and it's okay, that flat area we will fill it in with basic block. And you can see all this time Symmetry has been doing its job, so we have a very nice going on both sides. We are already most of the way done with the bow, I'm just saying. So again, people shouldn't freak out about this. It is not bad, but we do need to magically make this transition smoothly and sweetly into that. And how do we do this? Well, let's just I know I was doing a front to back, but I'm going to do a back to front here. Let's go hit tab and grab our 1x2. Don't think I have one of those yet because I'm looking at a 1x2 spot there. So I'm going to hit the J, and oops, that was right the first time. And I don't think I can just do this. Maybe I can. That looks okay. All right then. But I can't keep doing that because, as you can see, that block behind only comes up half a block, whereas mine's a full 1. So if you remember, we had the old 2x4, and now it's time to bust it out. If I would hit the right keys, there we go, J. Nope. So if I'm stuck like this and floundering around and things aren't going well, remember when I showed you the guide and U, I, and O are the flip keys? If I get frustrated because something's not fitting, I pop one of the flip keys. In this case, I just pressed U, and now I'm back in the game show. So those keys can be a lifesaver if your shapes aren't working as you are expecting them to. Okay, so how do we continue this progress? Well, we have achieved straightness on this side. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, we'll learn by doing here, that I can actually grab your basic straight 1x4 slope. But let's see, that looks like a legitimate 1x2. Perhaps there's a little bit of puzzle game to this. Flip it on the K. No, that is not our solution. Okay, let me undo that. What if we grabbed our 2x2, rotated that on the J, and I need to put a block up here for reference. It's a placement reference so that it'll let me hover there and then spin it to where I want it. That looks good there. So here's a trick. When I need to drag it in both directions, I'll drag it in the one direction I need it, press X, delete the one I just placed, and drag it in the other direction I need it. And ta-da! This does tell me, though, that actually this was a bad idea. I was trying to allow for that. And then, do we do this one again? Maybe. So let's press X to get out of erasure mode. And yep, we have a problem. How do we resolve this problem? Couple things we could do. This may be the time. I'm going to go ahead and delete what we just put in to bust out. I was hoping to not use this block, but maybe we must. There is the 4x4. The 4x4. The reason I'm a little hesitant with 4x4s is they are inflexible. If something doesn't work in 4x4, you're not going to make it work in 4x4, like, because they're a big space. So, oh, look at that. I think it's actually coming out basically perfect. All right, I will take that. Again, 1s, 2s, 4s, 1s, 2s, 4s. Now this is a 4x4 and this was a 4x2, but you can see basically your tool palettes, 1s, 2s, 4s. And look at how beautiful our bow is. That is a good looking bow. I don't know why people are scared of them. I guess, to be fair, I used to be. So include me. I'm going to take those two reference pieces away because we are building a boat that needs to be flotational and we want it to be as light as possible. There is a proper mathematical ratio between length and width. These recreational boats are definitely designed to be stubby. So I'm going to go ahead and just close off the back. Whoa, I'm in delete mode. X, close off the back. You can see those slanty pieces are not letting me do that. There we go, angular pieces. So we have this. This is in fact not flotational in Stormworks. If any of you have played around with game development, you'd probably know exactly why. There is no easy way to make game logic understand that this should be flotational. So if I were to hover over here, you can see it's $2,000 worth of blocks now, and if we hit the spawn button, it should sink like a rock. It sank like a rock. The reason being, as far as Stormworks engine is concerned, there is nothing that should be floating on this boat. In Stormworks, only fully enclosed spaces have the potential for flotation. So if we take this and we make it, in fact, a fully enclosed space, including the front, including the Trixie. Did we lose our symmetry? Why? Oh, I turned it off. I suppose that's a good reason. All right. There we go. And then, of course, this would be a leak, so we've got it X. Put that. Boom. All right. So now we have, there's no break. This is a fully enclosed space. If we spawn this in, it will float like a cork. the game can understand, yeah, that has a, displacement area because it's enclosed. So let's go back to the workbench and the real work begins. One more little point though that I want to make about flotation that should be helpful to you. And to do that, to talk about that, we're going to show you the next tool on the right here called Section Plane. Section Plane is a great little tool. It just visually knocks out whatever is on the plane, and you can shift it around. And it just makes it so much easier to work in certain places, spaces, and access certain spaces. And so if I were to switch my section plane to the blue axis, bring it to the back here, I want to make a point. This is a nice solid hull. In fact, that block is completely unnecessary, so I'm going to take that out in a second because we don't want any unnecessary weight or cost. Like I mentioned, we're in a boat, much like an airplane. It needs to be as light as it can be. Now, in theory, I will add that we could take out this. And that is my whole point of showing you this, except for the front part there. This, even though it just comes to an abutting point there, is waterproof. That will keep water out. It is adequate. If I spawn this back in, it would not spring a leak. You could get away with that being that and just leaving it that way. It's supported with the bulkhead in the back, this thing, and it's supported by the bow in the front. The reason you might want to not do that is boats can strike rocks in this game, and if you do, it does damage to the boat. The boat can take on water. Now, adding reinforcement isn't going to guarantee that it's not going to take on water, but oh boy, it does make it more resilient. So I usually, unless the design really prohibits me from doing it, I will usually do an angular block just for a little less mass, just for structure, kind of like I did down here. Now, if push comes to shove, I will delete those in pieces so that I can, access through them and different things like that. But it's my practice to try to have a decent amount of structure without just having excessive structure. Okay, so that's the section plane. Great tool. We'll use it many times throughout this build. I'm going to disable section plane and hide it. Okay, so we need to start, take this boat to the next level. It is, as I mentioned, one of those basic pleasure boats, right? So let's build its side rails out. We could probably build them all the way to the back. But, we'll still continue to build up the front. And on that, we could, just looking it over here, we could do, let's see, that's on the L. And like, how far up do we want to go? I'm going to go up one like this, but we're going to add some shape because we want it to look cool, right? Because that's always the point. People will do the argument, and on any builder game, Minecraft, Space Engineers, you name it, form versus function. I'm going to do my trick now where I delete the piece that I just placed, place it back again. This is an Expressman exclusive technique, and then pull it in the opposite direction so that I get my inner and outer pieces on both sides. The debate, on all the builder games, like I said, Minecraft, Space Engineers, of form versus function, and I'm always like, why one, right? Like, if I had to choose one, I would choose function, because something that looks cool that's not very useful, I'm a campaigner, so that just doesn't do it for me. But I think great design is both. It's incredibly functional and it's incredibly aesthetic, and I think that's awesome. And it's my goal in my build in any game is to achieve both form and function. So we just added another layer of railing there, and then I'm going to add one final one, but I'm going to put a twist on it because I want it to be sort of turtle-backed. And maybe you've seen this on some boat designs. So let me see, K-axis. And then I do not have a 1x4 or a 1x4 pyramid. So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to have to drop it somewhere. I'm not going to use 4x4 again. So there we go. And L. And I think I need to drag that. Yes, I do. And then we can just remove that extra bit. And so we're sort of doing this like turtlebacky design. It will help in theory shed waves a tiny bit, kinda, after a fashion. Come on. Oh, I forgot. This needs to be a, do I not have? Yes, I do have one. Angular piece, a pyramid rather is what they call them. See, I'm just nipping off the extra bits that I don't need, and oh, I need the pyramid for 1x1. And there we go. And I just grab my basic slant piece. And there we go. So you can see that'll be the top. You can see where I'm kind of going with this. And it kind of has that whole like Sea-Doo sport boat thing going on, which is exactly what I'm going for. So fantastic. Now, generally in these pleasure boats, they have like a cushion area up around the bow that people can kind of chill out and sit and bounce along the waves. I'm going to go ahead and sort of cordon off this entire front area and then sort of figure out how I'm going to build in these benches. And that's going to just take a little bit of figuring out. I'm going to put fake seat backs on, which I need to do another block piece for reference to make these work. I'm not trying to add unnecessary weight though. And then that's L. All right, so I'll do that, and that'll be sort of like a seat back, even though it's purely aesthetic. It's not functional. And then in front of it, I will place a couple blocks, and then I need to go up so that it's 2, and that's cool. So where I'm going with this, you can start to see. One thing that's important though is I'll be able to seal this entire front portion off. So I don't actually need this flooring here. It is, oops, well, that specific spot I need, but it is unnecessary weight. And once I seal it off, it can actually contribute to my buoyant compartment. So yeah, why not, right? It's win-win. So I'm going to delete those unnecessary pieces. That one was necessary. And I'm just trying to keep it as light, as buoyant, and as cheap as possible. Okay, so I want to kind of do the same sort of bench thing along the side. So let's do, it's going to have to come up one, I believe, unless, yeah, it definitely will. So I'm going to do this, and maybe this. And whoa. And then we've got the top of it here. And then we can go back to our fake seat backs. We'll make it look good in a minute. One problem at a time. And we'll do like that. And you can see I'm starting to build out this like circular couch situation that we're constrained to 90-degree angles on. And then we can make it look good. So this is a little bit of like detail. I'm not going to go into an incredible amount of detail. There's an inverse pyramid 1x2. But I do want to both show you how I kind of work through design thinking as well as how I just make things look good. That looks good. I'm happy about that. I'm going to go ahead and seal off the top of the bow while I am at it. And wow, there we go. It's still, now it's important to know, this is theoretically a leaky compartment because it is not sealed. What I do want to do is, let's see if this is the right amount. See, because I could do 2, a seat, skip, and a space. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Let's go ahead and build our, I don't know if you call it a bulkhead, but the wall that is going to serve our driver and passenger seat and our driver console. And this also probably tells me that maybe I can remove this. Probably. And then I can do a cool thing here, and we know that we can do a pyramid of 2, or we can do a pyramid of 4. So let's do that. And then I'll do a straight 4, and then I'll just have to grab it, and I won't even load it into my bar. We'll do that. And there we go. Pretty happy with that. Now, Stormworks is a little tough on the buoyancy of small boats, so if you think this looks a little thick, that is definitely on purpose because it will, by the time we add all the things we want to add, engine, fuel tanks, batteries, etc., this thing will actually have difficulty floating. All right, so I'm pretty happy about that for like the bare bones of our hull. This is something that you could actually just save under its own file name, share it with friends. Different people can just play along with finishing this out in different ways. One more thing I'm going to show you before we end part 1. We're going to spawn this into the water. And I have perfectly calm weather conditions, so this won't be as obvious as it could be. But if I were to, let's see if I can pull this off, jump on this boat, it is tippy. My weight is tipping it. Any waves would tip it. It has a very high center of gravity. Woo, woo, woo. B, to return to workbench. All right. And if you can see our pink square that represents center of mass is, let's just call that high, based on what we just witnessed. What is often done with boats is, they have better stability if they have more weight below the water and on the center line. So what is often done, I'm going to hit tab, type weight. There is a weight block, and this block is just like super heavy compared to the standard block. Now I'm going to take my X key, knock out the keel here, and then I'm going to replace that keel with weight blocks. Now you're like, Expressman, this is counterintuitive. We're talking about it being a challenge for it to float, but we're adding weights. Yes, you definitely don't want to do this too much. But if we only relied on engine, fuel tanks, batteries, etc. to be our weight, it's higher up. And we just don't get as much stability benefit. Sometimes it actually hurts stability. So by providing as much of this ballast weight as the hull design allows, we will gain wonderful amounts of stability. And I guarantee you, we could go crazy. We could do more. But I guarantee you, just simply what I did here, I guess we could have looked at the pink center of mass. Obviously, it's going to need a lot of balancing later on. We'll do that in later videos. But yeah, it's still pretty wobbly. But I guarantee you it is more stable than it was before I did that. And perhaps we will add more. But I just wanted you to understand it is a principle and a engineering approach that we do take in Stormworks. So that is part 1. We have the nice little beginnings of a hull. Please mess around with your own. Have a big time. And don't be afraid of bows. Get to where you just enjoy messing with bows and inventing bows and playing with bows because they look super cool. You get mad respect by custom making bows like this and on the community. And they're just super satisfying and nothing to be afraid of. Certain boats, particularly larger ships, you're going to want to, fully or partially round the stern side off. For this particular kind of boat, that's not a thing, so we're not going to do it. But the same principle applies. You usually just stop sooner, and blunt it off, depending on the kind of style you're going for. All right, that is part 1. In part 2, we are going to add the engine and a couple vital components, so stick with me, and I'll see you in the next video.